my job was to train new pilots in the F-111. One time I was training an F-4 pilot. He'd already been through the ground school and simulators and everything, and this was his first ride in the F-111. Anyway, I made a sharp turn and rolled out wings level, heading back to the middle of our training area, when all of a sudden the windscreen in front of me shattered and just broke into pieces about the size of your fingernails. And we were doing 400 knots, which is maybe 440 or 450 miles an hour, I guess. So if you ever stuck your head out of a car window doing 50, can't imagine what it's like doing 450. And I didn't know what happened because I'd been looking straight ahead, and all of a sudden the windscreen broke. So I opened my eyes in kind of like a blink in reverse to see if I could see anything, and I saw shards of metal ripping off of the top of the instrument panel, coming back like at neck level. And I said, well, the Air Force was always very good about telling us, they said, if you're not in control of an airplane, get out of it. That's why we put ejection seats in. I reached down and ejected. Well, the F-111, you don't go out in ejection seats. You go out in the cockpit, in an escape module or capsule. And what happens when you squeeze the ejection handles is immediately there's an explosive cord all around the cockpit. That explodes and cuts the fuselage or the capsule away from the fuselage. And at the same time, there's guillotine cutters that cut all the push-pull rods, hydraulic lines, wire bundles, and everything. And at the end of a half a second, a 25,000-pound rocket thrust rocket engine ignites under your seat, and off you go. If all these hundreds of little things have worked properly, you get separation from the fuselage, and off you go. And I heard this big 70-foot parachute blossom, kind of like pop open, and then all of a sudden the wind blast started slowing down, and I opened my eyes and I looked over to the right, and this thing is about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. So with no glass here, it's like I had the window rolled down. So I look out the side, and I can see this F-111 about a mile away, and it's in a slight dive, and it hits a cliff and explodes. And I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, oh boy, there goes my career. They were expensive at the time, like maybe $11 million, which is nothing compared to what the planes cost now, but it was expensive at the time. This was 1972. So I'm thinking, oh boy, So I looked over at this other guy. I said, Kirby, I said, are you okay? And he says, I'm all right, but he says, we're in deep shit, you know it? And I thought he was talking about the airplane. And I said, don't worry about that plane. I said, you're in student status. If anybody gets blamed for anything, it'll be me. He says, I don't give a about that airplane. He said, look below us. So I leaned out like this and looked down, and we're coming down in Zion National Park in Utah. And that's got a lot of, it's like a little miniature Grand Canyon, with spires sticking up and plateaus and vertical cliffs that go down into canyons, that are 1,000 feet deep or so. So anyway, I went, oh boy, this is great. Now what do we do? And he said the same thing. I said, I don't know, just tighten up all of our straps and put your visors down and hook up your mask and hold on, because we can't maneuver this thing. We're just passengers. And so I opened up my eyes and I look, and we're coming down the side of a cliff, maybe 75, 100 feet off to one side. So we missed the top of the mesa anyway. And just then we hit. Well, at the bottom of these vertical cliffs, there was maybe a 45 to 60 degree angle of where sediment and rocks and stuff had fallen off over the millenniums. And we hit on that, and it was kind of like a ski jumper landing on a slope, and it cushioned our impact. And so we started rolling down this slope, and eventually the parachute was dragging behind us, and it must have caught on something. And just then we heard a big crack. It was probably a tree or something that we, caught on. That broke in half, and off we went rolling down the hill again. And finally we got to the bottom and got out of this thing. Well, the capsule is laying on its side. The rocket engine has got smoke coming out of it still, and we're in this box canyon, a little canyon, with a beautiful creek going by and birds chirping, and the sun is out and it's perfectly quiet. It was a beautiful, beautiful scene, and I thought, maybe this is heaven, this must be. So anyway, I said, "Are you all right?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm okay. I guess, we were cut up a little bit, but nothing serious." Then they picked up the capsule the next day, and they literally went over it with a magnifying glass to try and find out what had happened. Lo and behold, right up here at the top of the canopy bow, there was little pieces of blood and a little bit of feathers. So they sent the remains to the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian determined that it was a white-throated swift, 1¼ ounces. Make a long story short, the Air Force redesigned the windscreens in all the F-111s, and they took the glass out and they put polycarbonate in about 1 inch thick, and they never lost another F-111